Hey there, my name is Stingy Fried, and today we're kicking off a brand new series set right here in Toronto, Canada. Or more accurately, on the Building Toronto server, where a group of builders have taken on the gargantuan task of recreating the entire city in Minecraft. Beyond just these impressive exteriors, every floor of every tower has a fully furnished interior. Even street-level details like traffic signs, power lines, and trees are real-world accurate. This is a public server, so if you want to visit Toronto but don't have a travel budget, all you gotta do is type in the IP, and just like any real-life visitors, you'll show up right here in Union Station. This project also has a website and a community Discord with more information, so I'll put links to those in the description. This project has been on my radar for a long time now. I mean, I'm a civil engineer by day and a YouTuber by night. That means I already spend most of my time expanding Toronto's infrastructure and playing Minecraft. I figured, why not try doing both at once? I reached out to the community, filled out a builder application, and well, here we are. Technically, I'm not a builder yet. Before they let me loose on Toronto's sprawling skyline, the admins have assigned me a couple of smaller test builds, like the one we'll be making today. For my first build, Gamefruit Pulp has tasked me with recreating the J. Frank Raw building. So let's turn on some shaders and make our way to our build plot at the corner of Church and Richmond. And here we are! This is what we're recreating today at 101, 103, and 105 Church Street. It's a century-old low-rise building with basement facilities, ground-level commercial space, and an office complex in the upper floors. It's also topped off with some quite unique architectural features, which has earned this building its heritage plaque. If I turn off shaders, you'll agree this area isn't really much to look at yet. Apart from a few isolated builds, Church Street seems to be the eastern border of what's been recreated so far. That's probably the exact reason they assigned me this address, because if I screw up, they could just reset the area without damaging any nearby towers. But yeah, let's try not to do that. First off, we'll lay out the building's overall height and footprint, and make sure it's set back the right distance from the curb. Since this server is built at a 1-to-1 scale, all we need to do is figure out these dimensions in meters, and it'll be the same lengths, widths, and heights in blocks. In fact, even the server's y-coordinates line up with the real-world height above sea level. While I measure things out, this is also a good opportunity to start finding block palettes that match the colors and textures of the real-world building. It's got this kind of pale yellow masonry look to it, so it'll be somewhere in between quartz and smooth sandstone. Maybe I'll just put a bit of both and figure out which one I like better. Alright, I'm probably going to tweak things here and there as we go, but mathematically and visually, I think we've given this building a solid skeleton to build onto. Let's start working on the interior. Now, Minecraft interiors are already a bit tricky, but this time we've got an even bigger challenge to overcome. We need to make every block placement as accurate as possible to the real deal. And to do that, we need to know what the real building's interior looks like. This is not a problem for about half of the ground floor, but the other 5.5 stories are made up of spaces that aren't open to the public, like restaurant kitchens, loading bays, private offices, rooftops, balconies, storage spaces, and boiler rooms. We need to get our hands on the building's blueprints, and this is where my day job is going to come in really handy. Because as a civil engineer, I already know how to find and access the city's public archives, meaning I already know that the records are really terrible, incomplete, and frankly a waste of our time. So let's dig through some real estate listings instead. And alright, I think I've already found what we're looking for. It seems the southern half of this building's basement was put up for sale a few years back, and not only do those listings include interior photos, they also include a fully dimensioned floor plan of the entire basement level. And it even tells us what's in some of the rooms. For the most part, I'm going to stick to this floor plan as close as I can, but one major and sort of inevitable difference between a real-world building and a Minecraft one is that most walls are much thinner than 1 meter. There's a lot of walls dividing up this basement into various rooms, and every single one of them is eliminating about 10 square feet that's actually meant to be floor space or furnishings or usable area. Rather than uniformly trimming down the size of every room, I decided to prioritize livable spaces like the bathroom and the kitchenette, and then make back that space by trimming down places that even these shop owners probably don't visit much, like the boiler room and the electrical rooms. Also, since this level is underground, I'm also going to be a little sneaky and expand the basement one block outward so that its back wall is actually underneath the sidewalk. As long as I line up connecting elements like stairs and elevators accurately, that shouldn't cause any alignment problems, because as far as I can tell, there's no basement windows. Alright, I'm gonna wait until I finish the upstairs floors before I finish furnishing some of these rooms, but for now, I feel confident in saying that this basement is as close to the real thing as possible. Before we move on to the ground floor, I want to just quickly mention something I realized while building the basement. So like, you might already have a sense of how precise this recreation is. Just imagine you can relive your entire day-to-day existence in-game. That would be pretty trippy, right? But since I'm an intern builder, I can go into creative mode and I can fly through my actual real-world streets! Whee! You know what? I've worked it out. This feels exactly like a lucid dream. Like I'm dreaming that I'm flying through the city or something, but somehow I'm in control? Oh my god, I could do that for hours. But if I don't focus up and finish the test builds, the admins are gonna put me back in survival and I'll have to walk the streets again like a chump. Oh yeah, that's the other thing I figured out. It turns out your hunger goes down insanely fast in this game. I have a pretty easy walk to work, but if I walk the same distance on the server, I need to eat like 4 entire steaks. And speaking of food, that's accidentally a really good segue into our ground floor build, because it's gonna be a restaurant. Now, some of you might be thinking, hey Dingy, when you turned on the shaders earlier, the ground floor looked like a dispensary. Yep, but that's actually a pretty recent development. Game for Pulp gave me permission to roll back the clock to the year 2020. That was when the ground floor was still occupied by Toronto's original Thai restaurant, Golden Thai. Golden Thai is credited by some as the starting point for what's now a thriving Thai food industry in Toronto, which in turn contributes to Toronto having the #1 ranking in the world for cuisine diversity. It was a family-run restaurant, and when they first opened their doors in 1991, the owners offered lunches for just $1 because they thought Torontonians might be more likely to eat an unfamiliar cuisine if it was really cheap. But that made them so popular that the servers would struggle to move through the dense crowds and reach their customers. Beyond its success as a restaurant, Golden Thai became sort of a local community hub, a place for people to just come and hang out. But unfortunately, the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic forced Golden Thai to close their doors permanently. In the years since, the storefront seems to have been mostly vacant, apart from a few temporary pop-ups, and currently it looks like it's occupied by Phoenix Cannabis. But here on the Building Toronto server, Golden Thai's doors will remain open to any and all visitors. Since Golden Thai was such a popular restaurant, I was able to find a huge number of reference photos from people who went there, and while it's unfortunate that it had to close, the fact that it's changed hands so many times in the past few years has helped me find real estate listings that showed me photos of the kitchen area and all of those back storage rooms. Alright, next up, let's work on the upper floors. These house the Mamann Sandulak LLP office complex. They're an immigration firm that has been operating in this building for 30 years. On the one hand, that's slightly bad news for us, since it means we won't find any helpful property listings this time. But the good news is, the firm's staff include a few shutter-happy photographers. Their presence on Google Maps includes a lot of photos of waiting rooms, conference rooms, fancy offices, and staff celebrations out on their furnished balcony. I've still had to fill in a few blanks since no one's documenting things like employee bathrooms, lunchrooms, and utility cupboards. But there were enough photos to help me guess where those might be, and to figure out what blocks to use for things like carpets, ceiling tiles, and drywall colors. An immigration office feels really weirdly appropriate as my first test build. Partly because as a new builder applicant, these test builds are sort of like a citizenship test, but there's another reason too. If any world-class detectives have been watching my Meerkat series, you may know that I live in Canada, but that wasn't always the case. Dun dun dun. I wasn't actually born here. I was born in the UK, the world's #1 exporter of Independence Days. I moved to Toronto back when I was in school, and I'm not the only one with a similar story. About half of the city's residents immigrated here from somewhere else. That's millions of people. So yeah, it feels especially fitting that my first experience on the Building Toronto server would involve an immigration firm, since the same was true of the real world city after I flew over from Elytra. Oh my god, that's so cool! Alright, the only major blind spot for me was the top floor. It's a bit different from the other floors, and most notably, it's got these fancy octagonal windows. Since the rest of the building's floors were so well documented, apart from this top story, I actually wondered whether or not this floor was even occupied. So I built it vacant. In fact, I've made it kind of seem like it's under renovations. I've got studs that haven't had drywall mounted on them yet, the toilets haven't been plumbed in yet, and there's still just paint cans lying around. As a finishing touch, for both the office elevator and the freight elevator, there's some kind of data pack on the server that means if I just add these signs that say elevator, I should be able to click on them and... Alright, yeah. Once again, I feel pretty confident saying I've made this interior match as closely as possible with its real-world counterpart, but we're not finished our task for today. Now that we've finished the interior, it's time for some final touches on the exterior, because we still need to work on the road itself. That includes recreating things like grime, discolorations, and greenery. We also need to replicate any utilities, like these tie-ins on the side of the building, plus the telephone poles, the traffic lights, and the overhead power lines from the streetcars. If I remember how to get to the server's map world thing... Yes! This place. So people on the server have made some custom maps with things like stop signs, yield signs, TTC. Alright, so we need church, Richmond, and we'll need one of these because Richmond is one way. Alright, and last but not least, we can use a hanging sign to recreate this fancy ornamental nameplate for the upstairs immigration firm. And with that, I'm ready to call this build finished. But before we wrap up the video, I want to start a little tradition. The mantra of this project is that every building in the city is the most important building in the world to someone. So for every building we add to this project, I think it would be nice to work out who it's important to. For example, a family who spent decades sharing their culture and cuisine with a new part of the world. It could be an immigrant who became a Canadian citizen thanks to this firm. It could be an immigration lawyer who landed their first job here. It could be someone who appreciates the architectural portfolio of Murray Brown, or a World War II pilot whose mission was successful thanks to the glow-in-the-dark aircraft dials that were manufactured in this building back in the 1940s. Who knows, it might even be important to me someday. If this test build goes well, this might turn out to be my entry ticket into a local community of Minecraft enthusiasts. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Game for Pulp has just assigned me my second test build, and it's a lot bigger than this one. So, I hope you had a wonderful visit to Toronto, and I hope to see you back here for episode 2.